The very first night that we went out with the whole team, we have a sandy site that we started using a few years ago. We call it the sandy site because it's a beautiful sandy field that sits on top of, I think it's the third largest aquifer in North America there in the San Luis Valley, and underwater aquifer. And it's out in the Baca and has just unparalleled views of the entire valley and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and the Great Sand Dunes and Blanca Peak and the Collegiate Range up to the north, and it's just stunning and very, very private. And so the first night we gathered there, got there a little before sunset, and as we gathered, we had Dr. Bravo and myself and Linda, and there were maybe 3 or 4 other people who got there around the time we did before the whole group of 34 arrived. And we set up our chairs, and right behind my chair and where mine and Dr. Bravo's chair would meet, as it were, maybe a foot behind our chairs, Dr. Bravo looked down, and there was this perfect double pyramid-shaped fluorite crystal that materialized on the sand. And that was where no feet had been, could not have been sitting there for very long because there had been a tremendous wind and rainstorm the day before. It would have been totally blown over. And it was just sitting on top of the sand. And she picked it up. And, of course, rationally, one would think, well, someone dropped this out of their bag. So we asked a few people that were there if anyone had such a crystal that they had dropped. No one had ever actually seen one like this. And we thought, my God, the ETs have welcomed us here with a gift. And it turns out that that's exactly what it was. And it was a fully materialized double pyramid fluorite crystal, maybe about an inch or so in height, just sitting on the sand as a gift right behind my chair. And it was really a very strange moment to realize that that's what it was. And this is the same site where a few years ago, and we've been going to this area at this altitude for many, many years. When we were on that site, we realized in remote view that there were ET craft in the aquifer underneath the earth and also in the mountains at Blanca Peak, which has often been called a spaceport. And when we were sitting there, we had a contact, and we started getting bubbles in our hermetically sealed compasses, which we've never had anywhere in the world at any altitude or temperature. And it was sort of a trans-dimensional physics. There was a physicist there who explained it. And these are hermetically sealed. And this was the same place where this object materialized. So it's a very unusual area that we're going to. And the materialization of this beautiful crystal was, I think, rather significant and a very special gift from some dimension, and I think it was from the ETs to us. So I have that here with me, and of course, if this was a TV show, I'd show it, but it's quite beautiful and actually has a strand of sort of purple that runs through it that's very beautiful. And I've never seen anything quite like it, but it just appeared there. It sort of manifested out of thin air, which we know is completely compatible with very advanced technologies. And in fact, even some of the scientists we've worked with who've done work for some of the 3-letter agencies talk about the WSFM, Weird Science and Frickin' Magic, as it's called, where they have dematerialized and rematerialized objects. And in fact, one of the Disclosure Project witnesses recounts technologies that he witnessed in 1953 at an Air Force base in Canada, where they were doing experimentation with these high-voltage electronic systems, where objects could be dematerialized and teleported and rematerialized across various distances. And to many people, I know this sounds like science fiction, but it isn't. It's science fact, and it's unfortunate all these things have been kept secret. And someday we hope that the knowledge and truth of this will come out. And when it does, it'll be a whole new civilization. But in the meanwhile, we're happy and we were thrilled about this little gift that appeared behind our seats there on that very first evening, even before the group started. And then shortly after that, another strange phenomenon happened. We had a beautiful, beautiful sunset that was just beyond words. And suddenly we looked over in the east and southeast, and the sun, of course, that time of year, being the solstice, is setting kind of in the west-northwest, and this was in the east-southeast. And we looked over the range, and it looked like a sunrise happening. And then we realized that it was a very strange phenomenon. No one had ever seen anything like it. It looked exactly like the fingers and the rays of a sunrise in the east. But, of course, it was at sunset. And it was some strange atmospheric and weather phenomenon. And the message we got on that is that this crystal had come from ET beings from a binary star system, a planet that had two suns, basically, which many planets do have. We have our one single sun in this solar system. And then we realized that Sirius, again, we're making full circle with the Vedic knowledge, there's Sirius A and Sirius B. And in fact, that perhaps it was from this civilization from the Sirius star system. So now that's speculating, but it was sort of an interesting coincidence and a very, very unusual natural phenomenon that happened, worth noting.
And, you know, one other thing about that crystal appearing is that out of that whole rather large expanse of what looks like pure beach sand, we walked to a place in the field and set down our chairs. I actually didn't go behind the chairs, and that crystal was right behind where you set down your chair. It was, on pristine sand that hadn't been walked on by anyone. And,
right,
and on the top, not buried at all.
Right, it was laid right on top, and it's very, very odd. Because if a human had walked out there and placed it, it would have been footprints, and if it had been out there much earlier, it would have been blown over because of the wind and the loose sand like you would have on a beach where the sand shifts. So it's just another one of these unusual phenomenon that we have happen all the time that's not that surprising if you understand interstellar transdimensional technologies, which you have to in order to be an ambassador to these people, because we're dealing with civilizations that are routinely using sciences of consciousness, but also physical sciences that would seem magical to most people on Earth today. But the only reason they would seem magical to most people at Earth today is that most people on Earth today have been lied to about these things, and the whole thing's been covered up because they want to keep people in ignorance. And we want to just shed a little bit of light on this to the extent we can in 2010 about what the potential is for living on Earth. And it certainly involves these very advanced sciences and consciousness, but also these very advanced material sciences that cross over into consciousness and that result in these sort of events taking place.